Ladies and gentlemen, we now present the Bravo Leadership Conversation, Shaping the Future of Finance Through Innovation. Please welcome to the stage 2010 and 2019 Bravo honoree and moderator for this session, Luis Alberto Moreno, Managing Director at Allen & Co. and former President of the Inter-American Development Bank, and our distinguished speaker and 2019 Bravo honoree, CRISTINA Junqueira, co-founder and chief growth officer of New Bank.
All right.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to talk about a subject that is absolutely fascinating. As Jaime was saying, a lot in terms of innovation is happening in Latin America, especially around financial innovation.
I got somebody's notes here.
Okay.
Anyone else? No? No one really wants it? That's okay.
Okay. Anyways, as I was saying, lots of financial innovation around payment systems, about electronic wallets, around marketplaces. If you look at the ecosystem in Latin America today, a lot of the new innovation is happening around financial services. And as Jaime was saying, there is no better example of a company that was born 11 and a half years ago in Brazil, literally not in a garage, but almost.
Almost.
Which is New Bank. And Cristina is the co-founder with David Vélez. And she came from a very successful career in consulting. She's an engineer by training. She worked also in Unibanco, which later merged to Itaú. And today, New Bank, by market cap, is the biggest financial services company in Latin America, bigger than, of course, Itaú Unibanco. And that all in the space of 11 years. Think about the enormous disruption that this generation is creating. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chris to talk about those early days. I mean, think for a minute, any one of you. You go and sit in front of these 5 monster legacy banks in Brazil, and you say, we're gonna beat them. And you did. How was that journey?
So certainly full of challenges. Hi everyone, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me again here for the Bravo Awards. So it was very challenging. We started off like with a very bold ambition of really using technology, using design, using a lot of data to do something very different. Like one of the things that David and I saw eye to eye on was we looked at the customer experience in Brazil. Like we would, him as a foreigner was even worse, but even myself, like as a consumer, we looked at what happened to us and we're like, okay, so we're paying some of the largest fees in the world, some of the highest interest rates in the world, and we're having like one of the worst customer experiences in the world. And we just couldn't square that. Like, we're like, what's the law? Like, why isn't anyone doing something about this? And it came down, so David was an investor. He was coming from Sequoia Capital then. He had been in venture capital for a while. And he had spent like 2 or 3 years trying to look for original companies that were trying to solve big problems, and no one was like even near financial services. So this was early 2013, so some 12 years ago. The word fintech didn't exist, right? Because no one could imagine disrupting financial services. No one could think of like challenging those companies, right? And there was a part of us that, of course, like, you know, saw this as being like this daunting task, but there was another part of us that felt very confident that customers needed better options. They deserved better, and that we could make a difference, that we could do something materially different, you know? And I think we started a company out of that place of like just not settling, you know, refusing to settle. And we heard a lot of no's, you know the story, like everyone and their mothers told us that we're crazy, you know, that there was no way that anyone could challenge the financial sector, right? Like these companies have been around for decades, some for over a century. and that has such deep pockets and 100 million customers. And so, yeah, it was, it started off of this vision of, you know, really believing, like this deep belief that if we build something dramatically better using technology, using design, people would just come, like people would just see what we saw, that we didn't need to settle.
So, Chris, talk a little bit about, you are basically a technology company first that provides financial service, but talk a little bit about the culture that you were able to create, because you essentially have an innovator first type of culture inside Nubank. And you worked a lot around diversity and really having a lot of inclusion. But talk to us about that culture and how to keep that culture from when you started, which you were 3 or 4, to a moment where you're now over 7,000 employees.
Yes. So I remember the very first meeting that we had on May 6th, which is the day that we celebrate like as our birthday. It was the day that David and I and Ed, which is our third co-founder. So he landed, he's an American. He landed in Brazil without speaking a word of Portuguese, like 2 pieces of luggage, and let's do this, right? And we had our first meeting. And our very first meeting was about culture. This wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't something that 2 or 3 years into it, we're like, oh, we got to figure this out. Like a lot of companies do that, right? But then they have a culture, and changing a culture is actually much more challenging than shaping it from the beginning. So we were very lucky that we were very aligned actually on what we wanted out of the company that we were building in terms of culture. Like we were very aligned in terms of what we wanted to stand for, what we wanted people to make decisions based on. And very early on, like, and you've seen this image, we had this meeting, and we wrote on this whiteboard, like this very small whiteboard, like the company values, and that's a piece of memorabilia that's still there in our offices, and it hasn't changed. Very early on, we decided that our purpose or reason to exist was to fight complexity, so that we could empower people, so that we could give them back the control over their lives, of their financial lives. And we set out 5 values that we absolutely love. The number one of them being, we want our customers to love us phonetically. Like we wanted fans, not because like, oh, we want personal fans. No, but because we wanted to build something so interesting and so meaningful to people that they would become fans. We looked up to Apple, for instance, that has always had like this fandom, and we wanted that. Like we wanted that level of like love. So we set out our 5 core values. We were very intentional about them, and the way that we've gone about about building the company and keeping that culture is like we've always wanted to be very clear about the things that shouldn't change, because a lot has changed, right? When you think about culture, a lot of culture is like, oh, which are the rituals? How do you communicate? How do you make decisions? How do you, and all of that has changed. Obviously, that it's not the same as when we started, like the 3 or 4 of us, and now we have over 9,000 people. So it's a fairly large group. So of course, like that has changed. But we've always been very intentional about the things that we didn't want to change. And that's our values, right? So what I can say is key things for that have been, first, make sure that we're making the big decisions according to those values and holding each other accountable to that, And the next thing is making sure that we're bringing in people that are aligned with that, because it's much easier for you to teach somebody their job, like what is it that they need to do, but have somebody come in already like with some alignment in terms of how you want to go about it, rather than bringing somebody that has a phenomenal experience, has a lot of like, interesting things on their background, but then try to hammer them into the box of your values. Like that's very hard to do,
So let's talk about the technology part, and I'll begin first with something that is very unique to Brazil and to India, which is the payment system. I really attribute that. I know you don't have fights along the way, But I think there was really enlightened regulators in Brazil who put in the PIC
For
system,
sure.
which today, the efficiency of the economy, despite the monstrous size of the 32% of GDP is the size of the Brazilian state, really has created a capacity to really disrupt. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what you see in PICS. I know other countries in Latin America have tried to do it. My own country, in a typical Colombian way, finds a middle of the road, which is not going to work because you need to have it mandatory for all parties. But talk a little bit about that, because I think that begins to enlighten the reasons why, being a tech-first company, you were able to grow so much.
For sure. So being out of Brazil was something that we chose, that we deliberately chose. David put a lot of thought about starting a new bank out of Colombia, actually. And of course, like Brazil was a much bigger economy, but also one of the things that we benefited from was very good regulators, very competent regulators, and that eventually were very favorable to more competition, to more innovation. I say that we've always played by all the same rules as everyone else. We didn't necessarily benefit from special licenses or fintech, like whatever. It took us 5 years to have our first like banking, like it's not technically a bank, but it's a financing license, and we play by the very same rules as everyone else, but we did benefit from a regulator that wanted to make the financial system much more efficient, which is what you're referring to, and that has been truly beneficial for everyone, really. So PIX was a big catalyzer for that. So we were already like growing extremely fast before PIX, but for certain that had an accelerating effect for everyone, really. So this has enabled payments at a scale, at a massive scale that has been unseen anywhere else in the world. Roberto Campos, who's now also with us at Nubank, who's a former governor of the Brazilian Central Bank, who has been, at the front of the PIX development. He was just telling us the other week that he never thought that we would see the volume of transactions that PIX is now holding. And of course, like we were well positioned because of technology, which is your point. Like because we were so good with technology, we were able to get ahead of the transformation that PIX brought into the financial system, to the point that like 1 out of 4, almost 1 out of 3 actually, PIX transactions in Brazil go through us, So that has enabled people everywhere in Brazil to take payments in a very safe way, in a very cheap way, because PIX is free. Like you can do instant and free payments like everywhere. So you have people like street vendors. You have people like freelancers. You have people like independent, like autonomous people, like getting paid in a much safer way, like without having to handle cash. Like cash usage has gone down dramatically. Boleto, which is like the payment slip that we have in Brazil, has gone down dramatically, which was something very costly for companies and for individuals. A lot of fraud also happening in Boleto. So it has brought in a massive efficiency into the economy. And it's something that we have been working with the Colombian Central Bank, with the Superintendencia Financiera in Colombia, as well as with CNBV in Mexico, because there's a lot of learnings there. Like there's a lot that all countries can benefit from. There's more formal activities in the economy. There's less tax evasion. There's constraints to criminal activity. So there's a lot of benefits, even beyond the pure efficiency of the financial system, which in itself is beneficial to consumers and to companies.
One of the things that you've done at Nubank is you attracted people from all the top companies in the world. You have something like 42 different nationalities.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about AI and how you recently bought a company last year that basically helps in credit analysis for AI. And this is critical because, of course, if you can deploy credit with a much better knowledge, essentially you are able implicitly to lower the cost of funding. So
for sure. So it's pretty obvious, and Jaime was talking to you guys about the AI transformation. So it's pretty obvious to all of us that AI is going to be very transformative to many industries, and financial services, of course, will be one of them. And we feel that we've been preparing for this our whole lives, because We've been using machine learning since we were born, and we built the company with the perspective of having like the built-in data infrastructure and the audit tracks, like so that we can be prepared to maximize the efficiency of the data usage everywhere across the company. We've always been a very analytical company that, to your point, sought the most talented people everywhere in the world. So we have been, as far as Latin America go, like always at the forefront of like everything that has been happening. And you brought in the Hyperplane acquisition, which is a company that was based out of California, Silicon Valley, and was using AI to develop the most advanced credit underwriting models. And of course, they were trying to pitch that to every single financial institution out there. And they were starting to experiment with some clients here and there. But it's very different for you to have the technology, have access to it, and for you to be able to deploy it efficiently, at scale, and leveraging all the possible data sources that you could, which is what we can do. So when we met them, it was very clear to them that whatever they had built would not be able to be fully like deployed or even leveraged by companies that weren't at the level that we were in terms of data treatment, in terms of data infrastructure. So that's something that we've been building for a very long time, and that we continue to invest on, because it's only going to continue to accelerate. So the Hyperplane people, which are extremely talented, they've merged into our team. They're now called New AI Core, and they've been deploying AI across the company for many different applications, from, of course, like credit underwriting, which is a phenomenal impact that we're already seeing in our credit underwriting model, to reduce losses, to be able to increase access to credit, to increase the credit lines that we're granting. But not just that, like for efficiency everywhere, right? Like, so they're predictive models for customer support. They're predictive models for cross-sell, like for marketing. Of course, we're working on an agent, because there's the rise of the agentic services. So there's a lot of efficiency that we're going to be able to leverage across the company with the use of this technology that we feel especially well prepared to be able to do so.
So let's talk about now your international expansion. You've been,
Sure.
In Mexico, in Colombia, but now you recently applied for a banking license in the US.
Yes.
And that's what got you here now living in Miami. Talk to us about how you see that journey. How do you see Nubank fitting into a market like the US, which is extremely competitive, but where 50% of financial services of the world sit?
Yeah, so it's a huge market for sure. So let me tell you a little bit about how and you know this because you're on our board, but we've always been very careful about the steps that we take, right? Like there are different strategies. Some companies are going to go out there, they're going to throw a lot of spaghetti on the wall, they're going to try to see what sticks, and they're going to try to do a lot. We've always wanted to do fewer things but do them really well, right? Like we've always cared so much about the customer experience, about NPS, and even like take Brazil, right? Or well, across all our markets, like we didn't just want to grow the company or grow the number of customers. We wanted to have deep relationships with those customers, right? We wanted them to love us fanatically. So we set out to be the primary banking relationship of our customers everywhere we go. So that's already true for 60% of our customers in Brazil, which is kind of like we're the number one financial institution that has primary banking relationships in Brazil, which is great. And that's the goal for Mexico, for Colombia, and everywhere we go, right? So when we think about international expansion, we wanted to take one step at a time. We wanted to earn our right, to take this next step. But obviously, when we look into the world, like, 1% market share in the US is like as big as some other full countries if we were to get 50, 60% market share. So it's impossible to ignore. At the same time, when we talk to customers, and we've been doing a lot of research, like we've been studying the market a lot, as sophisticated as it is and as competitive as it is, we look at it and we think, well, there's still a lot of customers paying very high fees. There's still a lot of customers not getting compensated for the deposit that they're leaving on their accounts. There's still a lot of complexity because people are managing savings accounts on one side, checking accounts on another side, like credit cards on another side. Maybe they have a personal loan somewhere else. They have their digital assets somewhere else. And that's a lot of complexity and a lot of transaction costs. And we know how to solve that problem, you know? So there's that. There's also the fact that we have millions of customers of ours from Brazil, from Mexico and Colombia, living here, working here, reaching out to us daily and saying, please, can you just open an account for me here? Because it's just so hard to deal with the complexity of the US financial system. And we would very much like to do that. So we wanted to earn our right to be here. We're going to do things, you know, in a very thoughtful way. But we think, or model, like the cost advantage that we've developed with our model so far, using technology, being great at credit underwriting, we believe that there's no reason why that's bound to Latin America, why that wouldn't be a good thing to leverage here, or frankly, in many other countries. You know, that is a model, having the lowest cost to serve, you know, having the lowest customer acquisition cost, having the lowest cost of funding, having like that cost advantage, that can be translated to economies of scale that we can pass on to customers as better value proposition. And like, we believe customers everywhere are going to want that. So that's what we're trying to do. We've applied to for a federal bank charter with the OCC. We also, differently from other companies, we embrace regulation. You know, we've always sought regulate, like we've always wanted to have the licenses. We didn't try to evade regulation. And, you know, we've taken the first step here, and that's what we want to build.
Well, thank you very much, Krista. I know many of you would love to talk to you more, but, you know, as I listen to you and as I see all these, you know, entrepreneurs trying to disrupt things around Latin America, I'm reminded of a line by Gandhi, who used to say, in thinking about the enormities of challenges like this, he would say that they first ignore you, then they discredit you, then they fight you, then you win. That's your story. Thank you very much.
Thank you.